Welcome to the 23rd edition of the Miami Book Fair International.
Todd James Pierce will be reading from his collection of short stories, News World. He won the 2006 Drew Hines Award for this. This is his third book. He currently teaches at Cal Poly University in San Luis Obispo.
It does have parody. So in this collection there's stories that recast the 2000 presidential election and the running of professional wrestlers. There's a couple stories set at theme parks where all the attractions all are based after news headlines, such as O.J.'s Bronco the Ride. There's one story arising on Christopher Reeve. But as I was talking to Mitchell about the appropriate stories to read at a venue such as this, he told me, we need to take it down a notch because Miami-Dade is at heart a small, good-natured community. And so today, I will read the first few pages from a story called Columbine the Musical. The story runs 20 pages. I'm just going to read the first 6 and a paragraph, and I'll stop then. Columbine the Musical. On Wednesday morning, between math and PE, I learned that Robbie Fenstermaker, who was set to play Dylan Klebold in our school's production of Columbine the Musical, had wrecked a driver's training car and fractured his collarbone. Collarbone, repeated Mr. Baxter, my PE teacher. He combed his fingers through his sparse aluminum-toned hair. We're talking a good 2 months recovery, he said. More if it was a nasty break. When's this place set to open anyhow? In a week and a half, I told him. Better scratch him off the program. He's not doing any acting for some time. Here was my problem. I was Robbie's understudy. I knew some of his lines. I'd even practiced them with my girlfriend, Susan, who got a little turned on when I imitated Robbie's stage voice. But I never thought I'd need to play this role in the actual production. I was a quiet kid. I'd only tried out because Susan was in the play. I stood there dumbfounded, dressed in our school's PE uniform, blue shorts, gold jersey, my name, Greg Gorman, thickly inked across my chest. After the activity bell rang, Mr. Baxter sent us out for 6 laps while he settled into a beach chair and asked one of his female assistants to bring him a Diet Coke. With the other boys, I ran my laps around our school's new safety track, a quarter-mile circuit enclosed by a 10-foot fence topped with barbed wire. I generally did what I was told, and I believed this would be the key to my future success. I was good with directions, liked organization, never challenged the teachers or security officers at my school. For example, I was happy in my role as library victim number 4. I was good at feigning panic, good at singing the soft low chorus of death we all sang while lying on the floor, while other students who played our parents walked through the library holding poster-sized reproductions of our dental records above their heads. I had no real ambition to be the star of anything, let alone our school play. All morning long, I told no one about Robbie's accident, not even Susan, who stood beside me in the lunch line. She was a tall girl with dark blonde hair that fell in a straight line to her shoulders. On that day, she wore the Abercrombie leather necklace I bought her as a 3-month anniversary gift and a tank top that showed off her tan shoulders. Occasionally, I wondered why she was going out with me at all. Clearly, football players were interested, but like me, her father had left her family when she was in junior high. I believed we shared something because of this, a certain hopefulness, though I can't say for sure what that was. When we got near the front of the line, she pushed through and ordered for us both. I had the same thing every day, a cheeseburger and a Coke. After Susan's father left, her mother had become an executive secretary for a law firm specializing in lucrative class action suits filed by ex-smokers. My mother, on the other hand, experienced repeated episodes of road rage until she finally gave in to the beauty of a quasi-Eastern inner peace and enrolled at the community college to become a certified workplace counselor specializing in conflict management. Because of her, I found my own inner peace as well. I looked for the best in other people and had learned that the meaning of life was found in universal goodness. That is, I believed we were all basically good people just trying to get along, though sometimes, because of our own flawed nature, we had trouble seeing how other people were trying their best to get along with us. I spent the afternoon in history class, then in study hall, where I worked on algebra homework, graphing parabolas that stretched toward infinity. After school, I stayed in the library long enough to miss the beginning of our daily rehearsal. As a rule, I hated to be late for anything, but I hoped Mr. Sweeney would select someone else to take the role of Dylan Klebold if I wasn't there on time. Only when the library was about to close did I finally load my books into my mesh backpack, the type of backpack our vice principal had instructed all students to use at the beginning of the school year. I arrived at the theater a good half hour late, my backpack slung over one shoulder, and sat there on the outer steps next to a publicity poster for Our Town, the play Mr. Sweeney had directed the previous spring. Though he was interested in what he called the force of negative publicity, he had yet to put up posters for Columbine the musical, because he was tired of local reporters stopping in to see how we were doing. Already, one of these stories had been picked up by the wire service, a short column accompanied by the headline, "Whatever Happened to Hamlet?" Through heavily tinted glass, I saw the other students weren't rehearsing a scene, nor were they practicing the song, "I Have a Gun, I Have an Arsenal," that Mr. Sweeney had rewritten over the weekend. Instead, they were sitting on the bare stage in a circle, their hands joined as Mr. Sweeney said how proud he was of them, his troupe of teenage actors. Musical theater has a message, he reminded us. And that message is, wake up, America, and hear the song the youth of your country is singing. As always, Susan was sitting beside her friend Rosemary, who played Cassie Bernal, the Christian girl who died a martyr. She looked so pretty there, Susan did, with her hair pulled back, dressed in the thin striped sweater she wore as part of her costume, complete with tearaway patches on the stomach and sleeve where Mr. Sweeney would hide blood packs on the night of the actual performance. I watched her eyes move around the room and wondered if she was looking at other guys, but eventually her gaze settled on me. Or rather, it settled on the tinted windows behind which I sat, as if she knew I was out there resting on the steps. For 10 minutes, Mr. Sweeney went on about how this play would expose real-life violence as the means of entertainment it had become. I watched him walk across the stage, his hair pulled back into a ponytail, his black turtleneck tight enough to reveal a slight paunch, his hands gesturing in a certain William Shatner way whenever he got excited. When he was almost finished lecturing, I left my spot on the stairwell, slipped into the theater, and leaned against the sound booth. Mr. Sweeney stood center stage next to a rack of plastic guns designed to look like the real thing. His gaze shifted to me, his eyes so blue most kids thought he wore colored contacts. Surely he knew how content I was as library victim number 4, lying deathly still while the students who played my parents carried me to the steel autopsy tables located in the side aisles of our theater. I did not have the ambition to take on the role of Dylan Klebold, hellbound follower of Eric Harris. Clearly, Mr. Sweeney saw my reluctance, but what choice did he have? Every play has its own reckoning, he said. No doubt, this will be ours. After rehearsal, Susan and I went to our lockers to get our books. Our lockers had new clear plastic doors so Tisha could see what we kept inside them, though I kept nothing but notebooks and granola bars in mine. On our way out, we nodded goodbye to our school detective, Officer Brubaker, who liked us so much he didn't make Susan walk through the metal detector, again, whenever something in her purse set it off. Officially, Mr. Sweeney had told the school board he was producing a, quote, musical to help students understand the effects of school violence, but we all believe this play would have been canned if our principal had not been on heavy chemo that semester. Even with this, Mr. Sweeney only got the green light once the Safe Campus Corporation agreed to sponsor the play, thereby giving our school a much-needed 10% discount on all the video cameras, see-through locker housings, and security fencing our vice principal had ordered that year. In truth, we all wanted something from this play. Susan wanted to get into a program, an acting program at Rutgers. Mike Rogers, the boy who played Eric Harris, wanted to be a paid spokesperson for Youth Against Violence. Mr. Sweeney wanted critical attention so he could leave our school and direct revivals off Broadway. As for me, I wanted to be with Susan as much as I could because we were both seniors. After graduation, I was planning to study business in college, Rutgers if possible. And after college, I wanted to manage a store at the mall. That is to say, I wanted to find a job like the job my father had held before he fell in love with Lonnie, the flight attendant, and moved to Burma. As we dumped our backpacks into the back seat of her car, Susan turned to me somewhat cautiously. Recently, she had begun to treat me as though she were slightly older, more experienced. I never said anything about it. The best way to deal with trouble like this, I've learned, was to push it away from you and say to yourself, "Self, I am not a perfect person either." Once buckled in, she said, "You don't even want to be Dylan Klebold, do you?" "I'm not a good actor," I said. "Well, don't you have all the luck," she said. "You don't even want a lead role, and you end up being Dylan Klebold. I mean Dylan Klebold. You get to carry around the gun. You shoot people. You look cool. Me, I get popped twice and lie on the floor singing that stupid chorus of death for 10 minutes." "I like lying on the floor," I said, "and singing that chorus of death." "You like it," she said, "because it's easy. You know, pop, pop, down you go. Anyone could do that, but Dylan Klebold, he's like super wussy, Patsy to the stars. It takes skill to play a role like that." She started her car, the engine catching on the second try. "God," she said, "why couldn't Rosemary run her car into a ditch?" "You might regret saying that," I told her. "Seriously," she said, "if I got to play Cassie, I'd be in Rutgers like you wouldn't believe. I'd be on scholarship. I'd be doing commercials on cable within 3 years. Mark my words, made-for-TV movies would be in my future." We left the parking lot slowly, since the street was heavily patrolled. We both checked for cops before passing a billboard our school boosters owned. "Remember, kids," it said, "stay off drugs." We spent the evening at Susan's house just like we always did. She helped me practice the role of Dylan Klebold. Truthfully, the role wasn't as big of those as Cassie or Eric Harris or even Sheriff John Stone. But we both felt it was important in its own way, especially with its Manhattan monologue. In it, Klebold talks about his fantasy of hijacking a passenger jet and crashing it into Manhattan. On stage, while Robbie Fenstermaker, or rather, well now I, read this monologue, Mr. Sweeney planned to project slides from Klebold's and Harris's actual diaries on a screen that dropped from the orchestra show. At the same time, the students who played the eventual victims were lined up behind me to hum the soft, low chorus of Future Dread. Without much prodding, Susan sensed my frustration. I was still speaking in my library victim number 4 voice. I couldn't seem to get beyond it, not even when I described the passenger jet as a burning comet of hate I would commandeer into Park Avenue. She pretended not to think poorly of me, but eventually clicked on the Playboy channel. She told me watching nude women will help you take hold of this role. We watched a segment called Totally Naked Women Smoking Cigars and part of a game show called You Bet Your Clothes. As usual, we ended up in her mother's 4-poster bed with its faux satin sheets. Since meeting Susan, I've become much better at sex. Since meeting Susan, I've become much better at sex than I would have thought possible a year ago. On our second date, she told me I was exceptionally well endowed, and on subsequent dates began to teach me how to move in such a way as to better please her. By the time her mother got home, we were dressed again. Around her mother, I like to pretend we weren't having sex. But Susan said her mother didn't really care about things like that as long as she stayed on the pill. I spent the rest of the night at home, reading my lines out loud. I was doing my best to get words like motherfucker to sound right when I said them. I stood in front of my mirror and repeated the line, "All you asshole jocks must die." But no matter how I said it, the lines lacked a certain youthful power and conviction I knew they required. I was good at enunciating all the syllables, but couldn't get my voice to project the right emotion. Even when I took myself moment by moment back to the day my father left for Burma, he'd left a note on my dresser, a small piece of paper folded in half. "Catch you later, Greg," it said. "P.S. Don't be a stranger." We'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Awesome. Do you want my 15 minutes?
No,
Really, I'll give you mine. So I want to hear the other bit.
Books are for sale. Downstairs, I've been told.